Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Nick Talks. This episode's amazing guest is a returning guest from last week, Ash, also known as That Preston journalist, and we discuss why he has the word that in the last episode. So, first of all, cheers, Ash, for coming back on.
Pleasure. Thank you, Nick.
Um, we discussed Keir Starmer last time and our predictions. This time, first of all, I wanted to talk about why did you set up your channel? It's doing exceptionally well because you're covering many topics that people want to talk about.
I set it up because, well, firstly, I live and breathe politics. It's really sad, but I really enjoy it. Actually, I enjoy it also. I was bored a lot of people to death by talking about it. If I go out for a drink or something with my friends, and none of them really care that much. So I thought I'd set up my own channel and start talking about it, and maybe talk to people who actually enjoy listening to it, and leaving comments and communicating and stuff.
Like
So
me.
yeah, exactly, yeah. So that's exactly why I started it, and it's just grown and grown. And it's nice to see your work appreciated because yourself doing this kind of thing. It's people just see a 2 minute video or a 30-minute podcast or something, but there's a lot of work goes into it. There's a lot of research goes into it. It's very time consuming. People don't see that side of it, so it's nice to see your efforts appreciated when there's so many people engaging with your videos and, like you said, leaving comments. It's really good. I just really enjoy talking about politics. The original idea was to expose the SNP. That's originally why I set it up, and that still carries on now. I still talk about Scottish politics today. It's just that I've branched out more into Westminster politics as well and talking party specific. And a massive driving factor behind it was my own disdain, I think, for our own establishment and our own political class. I used to, lots of people know this anyway. I used to be a Conservative member, and I had the disgust for Parliament. I had to leave the party for various reasons, including lockdowns and stuff like that when Boris Johnson was in charge. So I really started to see the light that we need something different in this country, and the idea is to show up these politicians or treat them, shall I say, with the contempt I think they deserve, and that's really what the channel's all about.
I saw some videos the other week, one of Keir Starmer, I think it was the races, and people were booing him. And I saw another one with a female MP in a pub for Sunday dinner being heckled and booed. And this time last year, or this time a couple of years ago, I'd have said that was disgraceful behaviour and we shouldn't treat people like that, especially politicians. But I'm of the opinion now that that's all we've got left because they don't listen to us. They lie to us. We vote for a policy, then they do the complete opposite. All we can do now is start being rude and not violent, rude, and start being rude en masse because we've got to let them know how we feel because they cheat us, they lie to us, they trick us, and then they think they've got away with it. They think we didn't realize, they think they're cleverer than they really are. They think, oh, that worked. No one really said anything. We didn't say anything, but inside we're fuming, and we've got to start letting them know. So more mass public rudeness is what I'm shouting for.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, as long as it's you don't have to be polite, but as long as it's peaceful and there's no violence, absolutely. I mean, people go on the streets and protest. Admittedly, some of them went too far in the riots, which I don't condone, and looting and stuff. But if you're going to march down the streets and call out Starmer for what he is, then I've got absolutely no issue with that. In fact, you should be a lot more thick-skinned than that if you're going to be prime minister of any country. And if you're going to start locking people up for putting stupid comments on Facebook, then I'm sorry, that's ridiculous. So what have people got left? Like you said, people vote for a party with the best of intentions, hoping that this party is going to enact whatever policy, and then the complete opposite happens. Of course, people are going to get fed up, to say the least. And that's what's happening now. Starmer cannot go out in public. He is a prime minister in exile. He's spent more time abroad since he came to power than he has here. He's basically bunkered up now inside number 10. He doesn't come out. Southport, he turned up there. He gets, well, I mean, it was his own fault. It was the worst PR stunt I've ever seen. I mean, to turn up like that and ignore members of the public, lay a wreath and then run off into your car and head back down to Westminster was shameful, to say the least. But from a PR perspective, it was a complete disaster. Then he goes out in the public, as you said, to the races. I mean, that couldn't have gone any worse. And again, I don't know what this guy's problem is. He walked through this crowd of people, they're calling him all sorts of names, booing him, jeering him, and he just walked through with a stupid grin on his face. To my mind, it's not just arrogant, it's frustrating for people because, again, he's not listening. He doesn't care what you or I think. This is a man who wouldn't know a working class person if one walked up and spat in his face. He hasn't got a clue what working class people are. I don't care what he says his dad did for a living.
Well, yeah, his dad was a tool maker. And then when you look into that, what he means is his dad owned the company that used to make tools. Because when he says, my dad's a tool maker, you think of him in dungarees, sweat, stubble, grinding something on a machine. No, his dad owned the company. Again, that's just another one of his lies. That technically isn't a lie, it's within the rules. But to me and you, that's a lie. It's not the truth. And he keeps saying these things, and he also hasn't got the nous to understand that him saying my dad was a tool maker, and when people laugh, he doesn't get it. And the reason why people laugh is because we're all going, yeah, and you're the tool he made.
Yeah, I know. He's never thought that through, has he?
He's never understood why people laugh. And the reason why he walks through those crowds with a grin on his face, and I'm sure that's embarrassment and not feeling that he belongs or being frustrated. I get that. That's a nervous grin. But it's because he hasn't got the interpersonal skills to be that type of politician. He really hasn't. He's a square. He's a grey man. He's a bean counter. That's all he is. And he's not got the skills of a Boris Johnson or a Tony Blair. And then last time you talked about Boris Johnson, who I think was the biggest letdown of a prime minister in my lifetime. And the lesson he taught us was, just because you pretend to be Churchill doesn't make you a Churchill, because that's what he did. He pretended he was Churchill. He was patriotic. He sold us this vision of the future. And it turned out he was just a weak man who had over interest in women, who wanted to climb the greasy pole and feather his own nest, who didn't want to work hard, who had no vision, no dreams for the country, wanted other people to fill in the dots. And I know COVID hit him. That's just an excuse. He was what everybody said he was, which was a vacuum. And I am embarrassed that I voted for him because I bought the hype. And he was the biggest letdown in my lifetime.
He was certainly helped by his opponent, though, wasn't he? I mean, Corbyn was never going to get elected in this country, and Boris had a pretty clear run at defeating Corbyn. I mean, your average person could have had a pretty clear run if they had half decent policies compared to Jeremy Corbyn. I don't think that was ever going to work, but there is a certain charm and skill to people like Boris Johnson, isn't there? The way they can communicate with some of the higher echelons of society, if you will, yet down to just normal working class people. They've got a real skill of being able to talk to anybody, command a room, talk to people. Farage has got it, for example. Nigel Farage has got it in bucketfuls. The way he gets millions upon millions of people to follow him, it's an art. It really is an art. And being able to speak the way he does without a teleprompter, without notes and stuff, it really is a skill. But if you look at Starmer, he's the most socially awkward person. Like you just described him quite well, actually, a square. He's an empty suit. There's no personality there. There's no charisma there. And that's why I said, and I think it was a previous episode with you, I said he was never going to inspire people in the way that other prime ministers have to vote for him. And if he'd had a half-decent opponent, he wouldn't have won the election, or there would have been maybe a hung parliament or something. But to watch the man even attempting to communicate with members of the general public, it's painful. He really is supposed to be, not ruling over, but leading the people of this country. And he doesn't know the first thing about them. He doesn't know he doesn't know the price of a pint of milk, for example. He doesn't know how much a loaf of bread costs. He's probably never found out in his entire life because, he tries to hide the fact, but he is from privilege. And when he gave that interview, or was it a leadership debate with Rishi Sunak during the election campaign, and he said, we struggled to make ends meet as a family when I was growing up. I'm like, do me a favour. You've never struggled to make ends meet in your life. It's absolute cobblers. It really was.
It is. He's, and the reason why he's grey and an empty suit and a square is because he has no ideas. He hasn't got a vision. And the reason why he's not got a vision is because he's an ideologue. He's already got the plan in place, which is part communism, part Marxism, part the socialist agenda. He's going to implement other people's ideas and philosophies because he hasn't got one himself. And people like that are very dangerous because they will do basically as they're told. That's how Nazi Germany marched into the disaster they marched into, same with the Soviet Union. You have people who are very intelligent. I mean, he's very intelligent. He was a barrister, so I'm sure he's very intelligent. But that doesn't mean you're going to make a good leader. That just means you're going to make a very good middle manager. That's all that means. Implementing what people above tell you to implement and looking at the figures and making sure every T is crossed and every I is dotted. That's the sort of prime minister he is. He's not leading us anywhere. He's leading us into what he hopes will be a socialist utopia.
If only they realised that there's no such thing. There's no such thing as a socialist utopia. He is very much, we've gone from Rishi Sunak to Keir Starmer, and you wouldn't really notice the difference that much, would you? The two of the same people are the two bean counters that have had good careers. I mean, fair enough, Rishi Bed is in the private sector, Keir Starmer's was in the public sector, but they've both had lucrative careers, and they're very good. They'd probably be quite good middle managers. That's exactly what they are. But like you said, they're not leaders. They're not going to inspire people to vote for them a second time. Certainly not. Look at Rishi Sunak. He couldn't even get people to vote for him the first time round. Keir Starmer was exceptionally fortunate in that as well, because the 10 pledges that he made to become Labour leader, he broke every single one of them in no time. That should have been warning enough to the public. But they are just a couple of bean counters. I think that's why Starmer is trying to go along with this devolutionary agenda. We're going to devolve this, devolve that. Lancashire's going to be this, and Greater Manchester's going to have that. Like, what's he trying to do here? Give away all the power, and then nobody can blame him for anything at the end of 5 years or the end of a couple of years. And he'll say, "Oh, well, that was down to Andy Burnham, or that was down to a citizens' assembly in Glasgow." It's lunacy what he's doing. It is, like you said, building to some sort of socialist utopia, but it'll soon come crashing down around him because that doesn't exist. He's not going to manage that.
It will all come crashing down, and for him, it'll be before Christmas, like I said in our last episode. Let me throw this question at you. Why aren't we attracting better quality politicians into Parliament, into wanting to go in politics in the first place? Because we're not stupid people, lots of clever people in this country. Why are we always getting B-class politicians running our country?
Nepotism. That's what I believe. I've been involved in local politics. I was quite closely involved with the local Conservative Association in my area, and I've seen it firsthand. If you want to get a council seat or one that's winnable, if you want to get nominated to stand as an MP for that party, any party, you've got to do a lot of brown nosing. You've got to do a lot of work for other people, and then you've got to be liked by the current MP for a start, if it's one of your party, and then they will put you forward to be a candidate. It's pure nepotism all the way through. Before an MP retires, for example, whether it's a Tory MP, Labour, Lib Dem MP, whatever it is, before they retire, their replacement has already been selected. So with the Tories, they tend to put people who are related to the people already in their seats. Was it Peter Bone who got kicked out before the election?
And his wife.
And they put his wife as the candidate. I mean, this guy's just been booted out for, I can't remember what it was now, some sort of scandal, wasn't it? And they put his wife there. I mean, that's how these people think. Whereas the Labour Party is a bit different. What the Labour Party do is they've already got someone who's fresh out of university doing the bag carrying for that MP. And then as soon as that MP steps aside for whatever reason, that's it. The bag carrier comes forward and they take over. That's why you've got Labour MPs such as God, what's the girl who just had a go at him from Birmingham? She's one of the hard left. She's in the. There's that girl from Leicester, Nadia Whittam. I mean, what's she? Early 20s. She went off with PTSD with the job, for God's sake, as if an MP should have PTSD. And Zara Sultana, that's the girl from Birmingham. She's about 22, 23 years old. How are these people? These people are getting there through nepotism. That's the only reason they're getting into Parliament. And there'll be somebody behind her waiting to come in afterwards. And that's the way these things work. You're not going to get the best and the brightest to go into politics because they've got to do so much backside licking of people that are already in Parliament. It's just not worth the time. Some people make the argument that it's a salary, like they're not paid enough, for example. But I don't buy that. I mean, £90,000 a year, I'd say, is a pretty decent salary. A lot of people would bite your hand off for that salary. If you were ever going to up the MP's salary to try and attract better people, because fair enough, you can earn more in the private sector, then you'd have to take away some benefits, take away the expenses or something like that. Because you can't simply keep giving them more and more and more money. The expenses are ridiculous as it is.
Part of the pull for you to want to be an MP should be patriotism, is the love of the country, of wanting to serve the country you love that gave you everything. That should be part of the pull. Yeah, absolutely. So I've always thought, you've given me some things to think about there with your insight to politics there. I've always put a lot of it down to wanting to be able to control the people who win the council election seat, who become an MP. So the people at the top of the parties want to be able to control their soldiers. So we can't have Nick Buckley, who might be extremely good on social issues, got a background in charity and da. We can't have him because he's a free thinker, because he might vote against us, even though he's a member of the party. He would do well, but he's not controllable. So therefore, we'll rather have candidate B, who's a bit of an idiot, but is grateful for the position and will do as told.
There's definitely a lot of truth to that. Yeah, certainly, yeah. I mean, in fact, there's no better example. I know we keep harking back to Labour here, but there's no better example of that than Labour during the election campaign. They were parachuting people in all over the country, left, right, and centre. There was at least 3 different associations I saw. One of them was Bolton, actually, where the entire Labour Association quit en masse because they were having a candidate forced upon them who they'd never heard of, didn't know. The Tories did the same, actually. They were moving candidates around and parachuting Rishi's mates in, just like Starmer parachuted his friends into different places. And like you said, they want yes men and women who are simply going to do as they're told. If someone's a free thinker like yourself, someone that's got their own brain, then they might actually come up with better ideas than the government at the time. Someone like, there's no better, in fact, a really good example is Rosie Duffield, who's just given up on Starmer, given a terrible resignation letter to him. She's a free thinker. Politically, I'm probably very opposed to her, but socially, she actually speaks quite a lot of sense. And when she's talking about Starmer, she speaks sense. When she talks about gender issues, she speaks a lot of sense. And she's the kind of free thinker that they don't want. They only kept her in the party because she won Canterbury off the Tories. And it was the first time Labour had won Canterbury, and I can't remember. It was a long, long time. And that's why they kept her in, because she's actually a relatively popular local MP. I think she increased her majority, actually, at the last election as well.
Right, wow.
But not many of them did. Like I said, even Starmer lost 50% of his own majority in the election. But she did really well. Now she's outside the tin spitting anyway, so I think she's going to be a problem for him. But she's, going back to the original point, she's not a yes man or woman. She's an independent thinker, and she'll say what she thinks. And people like that, people like you, and probably people like myself, can't toe the line, or simply are not willing to toe the line, especially if you don't agree with something. You might have your own principles, but you, like you just said, some of them are very grateful to be in the position they're in. Some of them don't have the brains they were born with, but they've still been elevated to the position of an MP. And all they've got to do is sit there and vote yes or no along with their party, and they can pick up their nice salary every single month. I'm afraid it's the gravy train, isn't it? It's that's the way it comes. I'm afraid you go from a councillor that gets £4,000. Is it £1,000 a month or something, or £4,000 a year?
Councillors.
Yeah.
Councillors get anywhere between £10,000 and £14,000 a year, depending what council they're at.
Yeah, well, there you go then. So you go from that to getting 91,000 plus a second home, plus God knows how many expenses, your own staff in office. You can see the appeal, can't you?
And all the freebies, don't forget the freebies.
And that's it, yeah. Tickets to Arsenal and thousands of pounds worth of suits and stuff. Yeah, exactly. I mean, what's not to like, I suppose, from their point of view. You can kind of sympathise. It's the wrong thing to do completely, but you can see the appeal.
Can you see change coming in our parliamentary system? I don't necessarily mean changing the system. I mean new class of MPs, reform, doing better, parties changing by themselves because they see if they don't, they're going to die. Can you see any of that on the horizon?
Only if Reform UK can keep doing what they're doing. I think they're the only hope we've got for some sort of change in this country. Whether you agree with them or not, the majority of this country are sick of the two cheeks of the same backside in Labour and the Tory party, and they want some sort of change. So Reform UK is the only hope for that. If they can get a decent amount of MPs in there to actually start making a difference and start contributing more, getting onto committees, etc., then yes, I think there can be some real change. It's going to be difficult, but I would say the Conservatives and the Labour Party are doing their absolute best to make sure that Reform UK can actually take up that position on the right of politics, because this country needs it. Every party we've got now are just social democrats. It doesn't matter who they are. They're all on the centre left of politics. All the Tories won't admit it, but they are on the centre left of politics. If Farage can continue doing what he's doing, they've also got that new chairman now, Zia Youssef, who speaks extremely well. When I've seen him on telly and interviews, he speaks really well. So they've got money behind them as well. Yeah, they can. As long as they don't make any stupid gaffes and don't say anything too stupid, but at the same time, remaining relevant and taking up the old Conservative position, then yeah, I think they can make a difference. I don't think it'll change the voting system unless they were to win a majority, which, is going to be a big ask. That I don't think they can win a majority. Certainly not at the next election anyway, because you'd have to go from 5 MPs to a minimum of 326, wouldn't you? And that's one hell of a jump. I don't think they can do that. But the Tories are worried. In a polling done I think it was last week, 53% of Tory members want Reform to merge with Reform UK. And Jacob Rees-Mogg actually came out and said that the Tories should stand aside in those 98 seats where Reform UK came second to Labour and let Reform take those seats. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think for a second the Tory party will stand aside. But
I think there's a good chance they will.
Yeah.
If the longer the election goes on, as in if it, let's say it is 4 or 5 years from now, and the Tories are looking that we're not going to win many more seats than we've got now, it means another 5 years of Labour, even though the people don't want Labour. But if we do a deal with Reform and we allow them to win 90 odd seats, and then in coalition with them, we become the government, and it'll be a Tory Prime Minister with Farage as Deputy Prime Minister, that shiny, greasy pole for those politicians who are thinking this is my one chance of being Prime Minister or getting into power, I can see a deal being done with the Tories' long-term goal of absorbing Reform UK into the party if they become proper Tories again.
Do you not think that would be the death knell for Reform UK, though? That would be the end, wouldn't it? Because people would look at them and say, well, you sold out in 2019, Farage, because you stood aside for Boris Johnson and you stood all your candidates down. And now you're standing aside again for the Tories, or you're going to merge with the Tories effectively. So you've let us down again. I think that would be the end for Farage. I think it'd be the end for Reform UK.
I think the end of Reform UK will be a better Tory party. So I don't think he'd stand people, then step them all down again. But I think he'd be open and honest going, these are 90 odd seats we're going to concentrate on. And we're going to do a deal with the Tories if we can. And because that means then we've got 90 people sat in Parliament, and then we can start changing this country. He just needs to be open and honest. It's about getting more seats in Parliament. That's the name of the game. But we're many years away from that yet. But I can see that being part of the long-term game. Again, because we've all got egos. So if Farage is thinking Reform might eventually become the first party, but it might take decades and I won't be here. Or I could become Deputy Prime Minister next year. Well, all politicians are open to that sort of that benefit, that temptation. We all are.
Yeah, maybe I'm being naive. I wonder if Farage has got a bit more about him than that, not to do a deal with them. Firstly, through his own ego, I don't think he wants to go down as somebody who simply sold out after being, probably the most influential politician in this country for the last 20 years without actually being inside Parliament. Secondly, I think he'd rather try with Reform UK. Again, maybe that's me being naive, to try and get Reform UK to at least be the second party after the next election, but get it chipping away at Labour and then maybe try again for the third time. Let's not forget, this is a guy who's turned down peerages. From the Tory party, they've tried to give him a peerage 2 or 3 times now to make him go away, stop causing trouble and everything. And he's always turned it down. So again, maybe it's me being naive, but I think there's a chance that he might just say no to them and say, no, I'm going to take you down with me. I think he's furious at the Tory party for
I'm sure he is.
What they've become, because he was a Thatcherite, wasn't he? He tried to get into Parliament for a long time. Is it 7 or 8 times before he managed it? And he was a Tory member. And the way they've, like I said before, become social democrats. I think he's so furious. I think he'd rather see Labour in power, at least for now, and watch the Tory party crash and burn than anything else.
I think we'll have a better idea what's going on in May next year at the local elections. We'll find out then, has the appetite for Reform UK plateaued? Has the hatred for the Tories been forgiven? Has the hatred been moved over to Labour now? The local elections in May, early May next year, will be very interested to see exactly where we stand. Ash, thank you very much for coming on this again. Let's catch up again soon and stay in touch.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Nick. We really appreciate it.
Cheers, Ash. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Did you enjoy that video? I think you did. Come on now, hit that bell, subscribe, comment. Let's build this channel. I need more followers. I need more subscribers. Be part of the journey. See you soon.